Welcome to the Virtual Entrepreneur. I'm Nikki Gagnon, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Esther Jacobs. She is often called the no excuses lady because she turns any obstacle into a stepping stone. At the start of this century, she was the Netherlands' first digital nomad, long before the lifestyle became popular, and even before the world was digital. She has visited more than 100 countries and hasn't stayed in one place for more than 4 weeks in the past 15 years. I am excited to hear about that. Esther has never worked for a boss and has set up many successful projects as an entrepreneur. And she's given more than 1,000 keynote presentations and 2 TEDx speeches. And she has raised more than 16 million euros for charities, is the author of more than 30 books, and has been interviewed by international media 500 times. Esther has been advising governments, digital nomads, and other organizations on how to adopt the system to location independent lifestyle that is becoming more and more common. She recently purchased a plot of an olive orchard at an old house in southern Italy and now produces her own olive oil. I am so excited to talk to you. You are such an interesting person. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. Now I hear the introduction, I'm a little bit embarrassed. It's like, oh, it's a bit much. But, all these things in itself are, they're easily done and explained. It's just when you put everything together, it becomes a bit overwhelming. But the main thing that I do is I keep everything simple. So, whatever I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to make it as practical and simple and achievable as possible. I'm not about making big strategic plans. Just take whatever life presents you with and turn it into an opportunity.
I think that is so awesome. And you are such an interesting person. And I know that we're going to talk about lots of things, but I'm really interested to hear more about how you were able to travel for 15 years and not stay in one place more than a month at a time. Like, that is very interesting to me. How have you done that?
I must say, I'm originally from, of course, I'm originally from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is a tiny, tiny country. So if you drive for more than 2 hours, you're in a different country. So just being within Europe, it's easy to go to different countries. But of course, I've also been to South America, to Asia, Africa, well, basically everywhere. And I'm driven by this huge curiosity. You're in one place, and I live by the 80-20 rule. Whether I'm writing a book or whatever, in 20% of the time, you can do 80% of the work. But if you want to get to that 100%, you have to put more effort and more time into that last 20%. So in the beginning, also when I was traveling, I was just doing highlights, and I would rather visit 3 countries in 3 weeks than do 1 country in 3 weeks. But over time, that has changed. And now I mainly travel between places that feel like home. And I'm trying to stay longer in one place, which hasn't really worked out so far. But I've just landed in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm planning to stay here for the winter, 2.5 months. But of course, I'll travel here and go to different places. So mainly this changing of location is, one, either because I have a commitment, I've organized a retreat, I've been booked as a speaker, or I'm due to meet people somewhere else, or attending a conference, or it's just because the added value of another place gets bigger than the added value of staying in the same place. So the feeling when you've been in a city for a while, you feel like you want to be in nature. And when you're in nature for a while, you feel like you need city life again. So I'm not limited by anything. So I just follow these needs and these urges more than other people, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And it's really nice to hear somebody else speak about that, because I haven't met many people, and I'm looking for more people who are really interested in traveling and having the laptop lifestyle, because I don't know why, but I feel like I was born with that same desire to just travel and, to help people and to create things and just like meet all the people everywhere. So that's really interesting. I was wondering, what do you think has attributed your success to be able to do that? Is it more one thing over the other, like more speaking or more writing books? Like what has allowed you that freedom?
Well, first of all, being an entrepreneur. So if I had been in a fixed job, then it would have been more difficult. I would need the approval of my employer and things like that. So that's a big part of it. Financially, I think being a speaker has made that possible because being a speaker, you get pretty good rates for relatively small amount of time. Of course, it's not just a half hour you give the speech, but it's the whole life before that that gives you the experience to do that. But on the other hand, keeping my expenses low, I don't have a place to live, I don't own a lot of stuff, also enables me to do this with less income. Writing books doesn't provide a lot of income, but they're nice business cards, and organizing writing retreats to help other people to write their books often in a week is also a good excuse to find exotic locations to give these retreats. So it's a combination of factors, but you can create any life you want. And like you were just saying, some people like you and me, we love traveling, we love new things, adventure, being inspired, being out of our comfort zones. But other people they prefer to be in their comfort zone and to stay in their familiar environment and maybe go on a trip every now and then. And that's also fine. It all that matters is trying to find out what works best for you.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. If somebody's interested that's watching who would love to write a book, or they've thought about it, but they're like not really sure how to start or, organize it, what are some tips that you could give them to get started?
Well, when I started to write my first book, nobody told me how it worked, and I had to reinvent the wheel. And often that's the case when you start something new, whether it's traveling or writing a book or something else, you have to reinvent everything. And I was like, why? There's so many people who wrote books and it's always complicated and you get stuck and you have to go back and rewrite. And now that I've written 30 books, I figured out what the smartest way is. And I combined my experience as an entrepreneur and as a writer and as somebody who thinks differently. So I invented something that I call reverse writing. You start at the end with what you want to achieve. So you write the back cover of your book first, which is the sales copy. That's what you read on Amazon. That's what you read in a bookstore. And it's in fact a promise to your readers. And then you only have to figure out how you're going to deliver that promise. So if you promise 7 steps or 15 tips, you know the table of content of your book. And then you start thinking about all the things you want to put in chapter 1 and with tip number 7 and with theme this and this. And you just put bullet points throughout your book. For one of my books, I did that during a Caribbean sailing trip, when I was too seasick to actually write on my book. But as I was watching the horizon and being dizzy, I kept thinking, oh, I can put this example there and that experience and this picture. So by putting all the bullet points in place, then later when you really start writing, you don't have to follow the page numbers. You don't have to write linearly. You can start, with chapter 7, that example that we just talked about, and type it out. And then you think, oh, and then I can put this in chapter 3. And then the writing becomes a creative process where you follow your creativity instead of having to do linear writing. And also the back cover that you write at the beginning, you can use it to test your book idea. Why would you write a book when nobody wants to read it? Maybe you have to edit it, you have to think of a different audience. You compare it to other books about the subject to make sure that your book has the right focus before you actually write it. So the back cover that you wrote, your book blurb, that's also what you send to a publisher. So you can use it to find a publisher. And also you can use it to get feedback on your book from others. You can ask if this is a book they would want to read. Who do you think, who do they think you should interview? What experiences would they like to be included? What questions do they want answered? And you can even start pre-selling your book. So you could offer your book for pre-sale, and anybody who buys it in this early stage will get either a special price or they will get something extra, like maybe an online workshop or a consult with you, whatever. And the money you make with that will help you to cover costs for a designer or printing. Plus, it's a huge motivation to actually get that book done because you're already selling it, right?
Yes. Those are some great tips. And I love the idea of not having to make it linear because that can create writer's block. But when people are thinking like, oh, I have this idea or I have this example, I can write that out and then slowly piece it together and then, look through the whole thing and make it like a seamless book. I think that's a really great tip to keep people going and not get stuck.
And this reverse engineering that I use in reverse writing, you can also use it for business projects, for events you organize. For example, one time I organized an inspiration cruise from Spain to Brazil. It's a transatlantic cruise. They were pretty cheap at the time because they were repositioning cruises and nobody wanted to be on a cruise like that because there were no stops. And I thought if it's a cheap cruise, maybe I can organize workshops on board the cruise, just like what I do with my writing retreats. But then I don't need to rent a villa, organize catering, make sure people don't get lost on a boat. They have everything arranged. But instead of writing like a business plan or investing in anything, I just posted it on Facebook. Hey, who would like to go on an inspiration cruise from Spain to Brazil with a different workshop every day? And only when people said me, I created a sales page and I enabled people to actually book the cruise. When you want to write a film script, first write a summary to present it to a film company before actually writing the whole thing. When you're a construction company, you want to create a building, first you create a sales brochure with a mock-up of the building and an explanation and the calculations, whatever. You never start building anything before you actually made a plan. But people think they can write a book just like that. And usually in the beginning, the first few weeks, it goes great. You write a lot and then you get overwhelmed by all this content you've created. And that's where a lot of people stop. And that would be a pity because so many people have a story that just needs to be shared.
That's so true. And there's also that good stress, that you stress of like, okay, people have pre-ordered, just like you said, and now like I have to make it happen. So like if you're scared, you still have to push through and you still have to make it work and you still have deadlines. So I love that there is good stress for sure. And that's a really great way to prove the market, like you said, because you're sort of surveying the audience. Is this something that you're interested in? Hey, I want to create this thing. Do you want it? I'm interested to hear, like, how did you organize your workshops like on a cruise? Did you have to like order ahead of time and say, hey, I'd like to book out such and such amount of rooms? Or did you keep it even less complicated than that?
The first time I did it, I made it so simple. The cruise was very cheap. I just made a package with workshops that people would buy on my website. I think it was 500 euros, really a no-brainer. And then I gave them the information to book the actual cruise themselves. Because if you book a cruise or a trip for other people, you're responsible as a travel agent and you need to have insurance, whatever. When people book their own trip, they're responsible for the trip. You're not liable, but on the boat or on whatever you organize the workshops. So that's what I found out just by doing. And I use this principle still with all the other trips I organize. People organize or book their own trip, their own flight. And when they get there, I make sure they get like the best accommodation and good food, private chefs, all inclusive. But I'm not a travel agent. I just want to share locally the good things that I've found and the special authentic experiences with the people that get there by themselves.
That's really amazing. I want to experience that. So that sounds so great. Like what are the sizes of your workshops there? Like when you do a gathering?
I have had as many as 15 people. I've had as few as 4 people, making it really exclusive. And nowadays I keep it to 6, 7, 8 people max, because of the exclusivity of the locations that I use, and also to be able to give like personal guidance and help people with their book or whatever they're working on. And it's really nice because the people in my retreats, even though they're completely different, we always find something in common. And together we create this focus energy by working on a book or something else. And it's like praying together or meditating together or singing together. You create this energy together that everybody can then tap into, and it makes sure you get better results for whatever you want to do.
I love that. And I love that it's a small, intimate setting. So you really do get to know each other. You get the interaction. You can get your feedback directly. And is the purpose of the retreat to write a book or to get it off the ground, or what is that process?
Well, for the writing retreats, it's to work on your book. So some people come to a retreat, they've already started, they're already writing, and they just need hours. And in the normal world, there's always distraction of work, family, things to do. On a retreat, I take care of everything. So there's no distraction and no excuses. So they can put in the hours. Other people have a desire to write a book, but they don't know where to start. And I'm very good in helping people get started. Like, you share your story with me, I help you get the essence, the back cover, the structure, and then you can look at existing materials that you can reuse, where to put it in the book. And when you get stuck, when you have questions, I can help you move forward. And for those people, by the end of the retreat, they know exactly what to do, and they just need some hours to finish it, but they don't have like big questions or hurdles to take. And I've also had some entrepreneurs who just wanted to create like a PDF book, like a free giveaway, like very concise about a method or something business-like, that they already had a structure or a presentation or an e-course. They could actually write the book from start to finish in 1 week and have it designed and everything.
Wow.
Can you imagine if there's nothing else to do in a week, no distraction, and all the personal assistance that you need, how much could you achieve in a week?
That is so great, because it's like, man, like, it's going to be fun. You're going to meet new people, and you're going to have your book finished by the time you're done, if it's a small book, or at least well underway with like a lot of really great detailed direction. So I
Yeah,
love
for a lot of people, it
concept.
feels like a holiday as well. It feels like a real getaway, and it's a business expense. So you can deduct it, as a business expense from tax or whatever your system is.
That is wonderful. One of the things that I was interested in is, how have you started your speaking business? Like, how did you get started with getting booked up, or how do you promote your speaking, your service?
Well, that's a long story. I'll make it short. I was traveling around the world and I wanted to do something good, like for charities. And a lot of charities said, oh, you can do a door-to-door collection or whatever, hand out flyers on the market. And I felt that I could do something more. And then in 2002, when the euro was introduced in Europe, I realized there were a lot of leftover foreign coins that people couldn't use anymore. And I decided to collect all of them for charity. It's a long story. I had no experience. There was no internet yet. Nobody knew me. I had no budget, blah, blah, blah. But I did manage to collect 16 million euros. That's about $25 million without making any expenses. So I got everything sponsored. I didn't make any money. Nobody made any money. And all this money went to charities. And I was asked to share that story many times. But of course, this is one story and it gets old after a while. Then I decided to reinvent the same story and put it in a different jacket, like with a different title. It was Crisis, beginning of like 2000, 2003, 2004. And a lot of companies had conferences talking about how they could do more with less resources. So I relabeled my speech, How to Get Big Results with Limited Resources. And I was asked to present my no excuses story at so many conferences, because after hearing my story at the beginning of a conference, nobody could say when it was announced that the budgets were cut and the targets were increased, nobody could say it's not possible because they had just heard my story. So that was in fact the beginning. And then everything I experienced after that, I included in my story to make it more personal. I participated in the European Survivor show, the reality show, and I included this, this group psychology thing in my speeches. I had a relationship with the biggest playboy in the Caribbean. I included it in my speeches about taking control of your own life, not blaming others, trying to change only the things that you have control over and not focusing on the things that you cannot control. I got fired from my country that knighted me for raising so much money for charity. And a few years later, I got fired from the country for traveling too much. So I wasn't registered anywhere anymore. And I included that in my speeches as well, how uncertainty, in fact, became my comfort zone. So anything that happens to me, I include in my speeches, and it's all evolves around the same theme of no excuses. There is no excuse. Circumstances change, but you decide how to use the opportunities you're presented with.
I love that. That's so inspiring. It's great to think about, because you might think in your own life, like, okay, this is just not a good example. It's just kind of a boring, who cares about this example? And maybe it's like one of the most relatable things because it's a, kind of just an everyday story that you can turn into something. And also the extraordinary things.
Yeah, it's something I've learned. People that are good at something, they don't realize it because to them it comes natural. So every one of us has a story, a skill, a perspective that is really valuable to others. And learning to find that, to distinguish that, to see that through the eyes of others, gives you an opportunity to become an entrepreneur and to add value to others and to be noticed, to be visible. But if you don't look at yourself in that way and can find and acknowledge that what makes you special, you can never stand out and you can never be of value to others.
That's really great. And I think probably the best way to do that, I mean, let me know what you think, but is probably just to go ahead and take action and see how people respond to it. I mean, if you're not sure, like, these are things that I'm good at and I love, let's try that and see how it goes. See if I can attract my people.
Entrepreneurial mindset. An entrepreneur doesn't go from nothing to success, but the line is like this, with many dips. Right. And only by trying and failing, you learn about yourself, about what works, what doesn't work. And only when you give up, you fail. And otherwise, it's just trying to find out what works.
That's amazing. How did you come to this no excuses mindset? Like, if you could give me an example of like, okay, I want to get up early and work out, but I don't feel like doing it. Something that people could relate to. How do you get yourself, like, are there any tricks that you use to like move yourself to do what you have to do anyway?
Well, of course, I also have these mornings that I'm, more slow and don't want to get out of bed. And my personal difficulty is sweets. So wherever I'm traveling, everybody bakes the most beautiful cakes and the most beautiful desserts, and everybody wants me to try them. And it's very hard to say no. So I know exactly what it feels like, whether it's working out or eating healthy or setting up your own company. But what I notice is that a lot of people put their efforts into their excuses, into explaining why they haven't done it, why they don't do it, why they, you can find an excuse for anything. Your employer, the weather, the economy, other people. But does that help you move forward? No, you just stay stuck. You stay focused on your excuses why you're not doing it, and you keep feeling stuck and not happy. If instead you bite the bullet or you eat that frog, as they call it, and you take that step, it will release an enormous amount of energy. And with that energy, you can take the next step and the next one. And the story about eating the frog is if you have to do something, you know you have to do it. You don't like it, but you have to do it anyway. They symbolize it by an ugly frog, and you have to eat the frog. You can either put it on your desk and look at it the whole day thinking, oh, I have to eat it and I'll postpone it until tomorrow. You know, it gets even more green and more ugly and more slimy. And you know you're going to have to eat it, but you postpone it another day. This frog is present the whole day, all the time. And you don't enjoy the other things you do because you know you're going to have to eat that frog. Why don't you eat it first thing in the morning when it's still fresh? Get it over with. And then you can focus on all the other things and get the energy from having done it and reaching that next level. And only when you've done it a few times, you will understand what I mean, and you'll never postpone things again or put your energy into making excuses why you don't do what you really want to do. It doesn't bring you anywhere.
Right. That's so great. So don't fight for your excuses, fight for your way forward, for your growth, and it will release you from your own prison. Kind of like if you're just stuck and you feel like, man, I wish I was doing all these other things, like just take the first step, make a little plan and decide, let's go for it first thing in the morning while you feel like you've got the most energy. I love that. It's a wonderful tip.
All these little steps, like you're saying, just take a little step. Just make that one phone call. Do that one Google search, send that one email. Little steps take you to where you want to go, not waiting until you have the plan ready for the big thing. Try something, just like riding a bicycle. You don't start riding a bicycle standing still and making a plan. You have to get onto it. You'll fall over a few times, and after a while, you'll get the balance. And once you're driving, you can increase speed or slow down or make turns, whatever. But while you're standing still, nothing will happen. Nothing.
I love it. I think that's really great. I think a lot of entrepreneurs would be able to relate to that story and understand it. I mean, because it seems to me that most entrepreneurs are okay with failing and okay with being curious and figuring out, okay, that didn't work. Okay, let's try another thing. And so that same mentality is helpful. And I think it's great to illustrate that, because sometimes it seems like obvious to talk about, but when you're like stuck in something, sometimes it helps to have somebody illustrate that, or point it out, like, hey, be really gentle with yourself. Just do this one thing, just do this next step, and keep it really simple and just stay in the step you're in. And I think that's really helpful advice. I think it's really freeing, and it doesn't feel like it's another thing I have to do. It's like, hey, this is actually your path to freedom.
And there's another thing people can do that's very concrete, is to surround yourself with people who are already doing it. Whatever you want to do, surround yourself with people who have already done it, who are already doing it, and not with people who will say it's not possible or will increase your doubts or your fear. So surround yourself with people who are the way forward and not with people who are holding you back. That also really, really helps.
Oh, I totally agree. I know it's made a huge difference for me if I've been around someone who's like doubting or questioning, like, hey, is this the thing? Is this the one that's going to work? You know, and you're just trying so hard to make something happen. You're like, just encourage me.
Like with writing a book, for example, I think it's one of the most concrete examples of a big project. And some people really feel they have a story they need to share. And what if everybody in your environment tells you you can't do it, you know, it's too difficult, and it reinforces these doubts that everybody has? What if you meet somebody like me or some of the people that I've helped to write their book, and they say, well, I had doubts in the beginning, but it's really, really possible. And these are the 3 things you should do. And these are the 3 things you shouldn't do. And take this step and this step, and then, you know, you will make it happen. And it's worth sharing your story. It's a completely different energy.
It is. That's wonderful. I'm just like, I love the person that you are. And I'm so glad that I've gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit, and that the audience is getting to know who you are, because you're just such a bright light in this world. And I would love to get to know you even better after this. So before we end the interview, I'd love to hear about how you purchased an olive orchard and like what that was like, and then where you are now, like we were talking about, you could show us where you are now.
Yes, well, to thank you for your compliments. And in general, I'm a pretty positive person, but I must be honest and say that sometimes, I'm also a victim of my environment. So, for example, I lived in Mallorca for a while, the Spanish island of Mallorca next to Ibiza. And in the center, I owned a small farm with my ex-boyfriend, the Mr. Wrong from Curacao, the Caribbean island. And I loved that place. I loved being outside and playing with the chickens and having olive trees and almond trees. But when we broke up, the house was mostly his. So he bought my part of the house and I could still visit for a few years. But then at some point he sold the house. And it really hurt to lose that little piece of land that felt like home. But I didn't have enough money to buy my own piece of land in Mallorca because it's pretty expensive. And then I was on a trip with friends in the south of Italy, in Puglia, very poor region, but the land is exactly the same as in Mallorca. It has red earth, it has almond trees, fig trees and olive trees, and it has these dry stone walls of piled up stones. And it really felt just like Mallorca. And I walked past a real estate agent and I saw you could buy a piece of land there for like 20,000 euros. Wow. And I was like, yes, I'm going to do it just as a passion project, just to have this feeling. So a few weeks later, I went back and in 3 days, without knowing anything, I just bought a piece of land that I fell in love with. And of course, I shared it on social media. And then people said, oh, that's great. Can you help me to buy a piece of land? Can I help you to work on your land? Can I buy your olive oil? Can I rent a little house on the land? So quickly, I created a website. I designed a logo, Tiny Trulo, it's called. And there were olive trees and the olive harvest was happening. So I harvested the olives and then I had 250 liters of olive oil and I was sold out in 3 weeks. And now I'm restructuring the Trulo. I organized inspiration trips because people were asking, can you show me around? Can you help me to buy a piece of land? So from something negative, I lost this farm that I loved so much in Mallorca. Something came into existence of a dream, a passion. I found something that I really liked. I didn't intend it to be a business. And because I communicated about it with so much passion, suddenly it turned into a business-ish thing. And that's how many things happen. Follow your passion and follow this opportunity and look for new possibilities.
I think that's so great. And I think it's also a testimonial of like how much people really love you. And they're like, whatever she's up to, I'm in. Like, I want to be a part of it because it's really fun. And they understand that you're just an entrepreneur at heart and you want adventure and anything is possible. And I just really love that. It's a wonderful story.
Thank you. I'm still enjoying the feeling of, owning an olive orchard. It's something that sounds so dreamlike and it's not as difficult as it sounds. You just go there and buy something, it's not like you have to study for it or make a business plan or whatever. It's fun.
That's so awesome. Yeah. And it's really cool just to like try something new and just do it as a passion project. And then if it turns into another business, that's really amazing as well. So I know that you don't stay put in one spot more than 4 weeks. So can you tell us where you are now?
Yeah, I arrived here 2 days ago. I'm in South Africa, Cape Town, and I'm going to spend the winter here because it's summer here. The European winter is the summer here. Plus, there's only 1 hour time difference with Europe. So I can do my coaching sessions, I can write, I can, just do my normal things with not too much difference. But in the morning, I can go surfing or hiking or whatever, and then still be behind my screen at 9 o'clock European time. And then I have from 6 to 10 in the morning, for example, to do outdoor activities. And of course, the weekends and some days off. And there's a group of people here who also work remote. So together, we inspire each other. We work together, we go on hikes together. And it's just wonderful. And the country really, really needs these visitors because South Africa is in a very bad light in the media. But really, the country is much more advanced than most European and American countries in terms of COVID testing, of hygiene. People are super friendly, it's cheap, the food is good, and I can show you my view here. It's just amazing and very, very affordable.
Yes,
Maybe the
please.
internet connection will drop a little bit, but then I'll just run back inside.
Okay.
But from my apartment, you can see Table Mountain. It's there,
Oh,
just covered in
beautiful.
clouds. And this is the sea. People are kite surfing.
Oh, wow. That's so
And this
beautiful.
is the apartment.
What a great view.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, it's very, very affordable. In fact, traveling or living here is more affordable than living a very restricted life in Europe or the United States.
Wow, that is so amazing. And when you I love this so much. I will wrap this up, but I do have one more question. How
Come
do
and
you
join me.
structure? I will. I am so excited about your life. Like, it's so awesome. And I love, I mean, I can't say enough wonderful things about you. You're just a really great person. So how do you structure your day? This is my last question about that, but I hear that in the morning from 6 to 10, you like to have outdoor time, you like to be active, do things with your friends. And then of course, after work, which I think is wonderful because you're taking care of your health, you're getting outside, you're getting community, like so many great things are built into your day. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you structure work and what a typical day would look like?
Well, the funny thing is I don't have any structure at all because every day is different wherever I am, whatever. But what I have learned to do is to manage my own energy. So I've been in a car accident about 8 years ago and I had a whiplash. So my concentration is not as good as it used to be. And my main focus every day is to find out where I have a window of opportunity, of a clear mind. Usually it's in the morning. So I try to save my brain work for the morning. So writing, structuring, like really concentrated work. I can only do it when my mind is clear. And then things like phone calls or doing research or answering emails, I can also do when I'm not at my top. So if I make the mistake of starting the morning with answering emails, and then in the afternoon, for example, I have to write, I can't do it. So I'm training myself, and still it's not always working. I'm trying to train myself to, whenever an opportunity presents itself of a clear mind, I work. And when my mind is not working, it's no use being behind the computer. So then I go for a walk or I cook. I really like the meditation of creating a meal with the local ingredients, something like that. So I'm trying to follow my energy. And I notice when my schedule is determined by phone calls or by other people's schedule, I get really irritated because then I have to sit behind my computer when I have no brain space. Or when I have brain space, I have to do something with them because we agreed at this time we would do something, and I'm wasting my window of opportunity for doing concentrated work. So energy management, try to find out what works for you. Are you a night person, a morning person? Different times of the day for doing research, for doing creativity, for doing production work, and try to structure your days like that.
That's great. I love that. I love that it's based on energy instead of a completely structured day. But I do like that you know yourself, which is really important. If you know my morning is when I have the most focus, the most energy, that's when I need to be productive, then you're unlikely to schedule calls or do anything that will create distractions. So that's been great. And you are just absolutely lovely. I have such a great time speaking with you. I think that your life is really interesting, and I'm very interested to find out more about your workshops. So if you could please share where people can find you and how they can spend time with you.
Well, thanks for your kind words. I'm also really interested to know more about you and about other people who are watching this. My main point of information is my website. It's estherjacobs.info. And I have lots of blogs and free giveaways and like things that you can immediately use, tips and tricks. And of course, I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And I regularly post updates, not only of the inspiring places that I am, but also like tips and tricks and lots of added value, because I think it's really important to first give a lot before you ask people to join a workshop or to buy a book, whatever. So please feel free to follow me, to send me a message, to have a look at the website, and maybe one day I'll see you in a workshop or a retreat or in another way.
Absolutely. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and for this wonderful interview.
Thank you.